Good evening and welcome to the Monday, March 4th, 2024 regular meeting of the South Haven City Council. This meeting is called to order. Tonight we have invocation from Pastor Gary Guthrie of the South Haven Community Church. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for the invite. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, so appreciate it. If you would join me. Father God, we thank you so much for who you are. And Lord, we thank you for all these representatives that sit in this room and those of this community who are here. Lord, we pray that we would just lift up our leaders to you. We all need that, and we all need to be encouraged and uplifted. And Lord, we know the burden and the heaviness of some of the things that they must make decisions on and carry. And we also know that everyone is not always happy in the end. But Lord, we pray that you would give us a heart of gratitude for the place that we live, for the business that is conducted here, for the blessings that you pour out. And again, we just pray that you would provide wisdom and discernment in this room and in this meeting. Lord, we love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Megan, could we have a roll call, please?
Of course. Jeff Arnold.
Here.
Mary Hasley.
Here.
Wendy Onuki.
Here.
Joe Reeser.
Here.
George Sleeper.
Here.
Letitia Wilkins. Annie Brown.
Here. And could we have a motion to excuse Letitia Wilkins?
I make a motion to excuse Letitia Wilkins.
Second.
All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? And Letitia Wilkins is excused for personal reasons. Tonight we have a presentation from the Van Buren County Central Dispatch Director, Tim McGee. Welcome.
Thank you. Always a privilege to be able to come and give you a bit of an update on what's going on in 911 and Central Dispatch in Van Buren County. Thank you to Kate for your invitation. Appreciate that very much. Try to be short and sweet. You know, sometimes that's tough for an old speaker to do that, but we'll do our best. I won't spend much time. This is our mission statement that we've developed several years ago. And in essence, our purpose is to serve the public, both the citizens of Van Buren County, our visitors, and our field responders as they respond to various emergencies. From there, then we have developed 4 objectives. Basically, if something doesn't fall within those objectives, we don't do it. And that kind of helps us to say no at times. I affectionately tell our staff, we are public servants, we are not a concierge. And sometimes it's easy to do that. Just have 911 do it, have Central Dispatch do it. As you can imagine, if any of you have ever been there, we would give you an open invitation to come visit. We are in the basement of the Sheriff's Office in Paw Paw. Our staff sits in front of 8 monitors. One of the things that we talk about is technology overload. At some point, the human brain can only take in so much. And so between radio traffic, phone traffic, dispatching, all the various things that we do, there's a lot that dispatcher has to take into their brain and then disseminate that information. Excuse me. If we can go to the next slide, please, Kate. Just kind of an overview real quick. How does 911 function? In the state of Michigan, Public Act 32, which we affectionately call the 911 Act, gives county boards of commissions the authority to establish within that county how 911 services are going to be disseminated and operated, et cetera. Each county has to develop a plan. Van Buren County is no different. We have a plan in place called the 911 Service Plan. With that, there's a series of things statutorily and how 911 has to operate, and then there's some funding options as well. In Van Buren County, we are completely surcharge funded. There's no general fund tax dollars. There's no property tax millage dollars to fund 911. So you have 2 basic funding mechanisms. You have a state surcharge, 25 cents per month that you'll see on your phone bill. That provides some training funds across the state to all of the 911 centers that apply for that. And then we have a local surcharge of $3 per line per month. So, well, that seems like a lot when you look at your bill and you look at all the little taxes that show up on your phone bill. It's not just $3. But for Van Buren County, that $3 funds everything we do. We collect about $2 million a year-ish from our surcharge fund. Excuse me. And so with that, everything that takes place 911-wise comes out of that $3. So how much is that? Well, you can't buy a gallon of milk for $3, can you? I've had folks say, well, I have 3 children, so I have 5 phones in my family. That's $15 a month. Well, you can't go to McDonald's for $15. Can't hardly go there for a single person for $15. So I will say this, that we have been very fortunate in Van Buren County throughout the course of the years to be able to maintain the service level that we have on just surcharge dollars. We've not had to go to the Board of Commissioners and ask for general fund dollars. So when you think about picking up your phone and calling 911, that $3 on your bill, UC takes care of that. So just one thing that I'd ask for you, in August, we'll be going to the voters for a renewal of that surcharge. It has to be renewed every 4 years. And then the Board of Commissioners annually review that and reset that collection period. You have to do that statutorily. So when you go to the ballot in August, you'll see a renewal on the ballot for that $3 service charge, and we would certainly appreciate you supporting that as you look at that. Excuse me. This is aftermath of COVID, believe it or not, that little hacky cough from 6 months ago. What do? We dispatch every law enforcement agency, every fire agency, and every EMS agency in the county. The road commission, when we have road needs, trees down, utilities, all of those kind of services that happen. Support units, of course. One thing that we're very proud of, and I'll give a plug, Sheriff Abbott sitting back here tonight, we in Van Buren County, I've been in Van Buren County almost 30 years now, a little over 30 years actually, a critical incident stress team when a public safety member goes through a critical incident. Maybe it's a fatal car accident or a fatal fire or something that's significant that just affects that individual. Those of us in the public safety community, we're a little weird sometimes, and we don't like to talk to people outside of our world. And so for a long, long time, we did not have any kind of critical incident team inside Van Buren County. I participated in one about 25 years ago. Some of you might remember back a long time ago. We lost a number of teenagers in car wrecks over the course of about 15 years. And we did some of that, but we did some of that through schools and some other things, but nothing ever for public safety. Through Sheriff Abbott's leadership, we now have a critical incident team here in the county headed through the sheriff's office. And Sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong, we've probably had a dozen incidents in the last couple of years that we've sent teams to agencies to help those first responders deal with the mental health side of critical incidents. And so that's one of the things that our dispatch center participates in and then helps call those people out when we need to. Let's go to the next slide if we could, please. Something a lot of people don't realize is that Central Dispatch in Van Buren County, we enter all this court paperwork, all the warrants, conditional bond orders, personal protection orders, and then we hold those warrants and all that paperwork in the dispatch center. Right now, we've probably got 6,500 warrants sitting in drawers that go back years. Of that, in 2018, we did a time study. We found that there was a 40% increase in the amount of court paperwork that was taking place, that was coming into our center, that was taking our center's time. We saw another huge increase between 2020 and 2023, and so a year ago, the Board of Commissioners authorized us to add 2 additional staff positions, which we've yet to fill. So we are like everybody else having a hard time finding good qualified candidates. Anytime I can steal one from South Haven, I do. There's something about what gets grown over here that really is great. And we're very appreciative of that. Excuse me. And so we are currently staffed. We have a complement of 17, myself, 2 supervisors, and 14 dispatchers. We still have 2 open positions. And some of the challenges is having enough trainers to train. It takes about 6 months, one-on-one, to get somebody trained to dispatch full-time. What's going on in the center? Let's take a look at the next slide, if we could, please. Average about 120,000 phone calls a year, you can see there. About every 4 minutes, the phone rings in our center during day and evening hours. Takes a dramatic drop after midnight. And then you can see how the breakdown is. It's about 35-65% between 911 phone calls and those that come in on a 10-digit phone line, 269-657-3101. We do get emergencies on those non-emergency phone calls. We take transfers from other counties, and then we also transfer to other counties as well, particularly from the wireless side of the house. Next slide, please. So across the county for 2023, you can see the increase that we saw in every discipline. The least, of course, as you see, is fire. If you talk to some of the fire folks across the county, they're going to say it didn't feel like it. Where we really feel it is in law enforcement and in medical. Coming out of COVID in 2020, we saw a pretty big spike in CPS calls, mental health calls, suicidal ideations. And so we're taking up resources more than we ever did. In every discipline, if you talk to every discipline, police, fire, EMS, we're all hurting for people. It's hard to find people who want to serve in public safety. So if you know somebody, send them our way. We'd be happy to talk to them about that. So for tonight, I wanted to just kind of pull some stats from 2023 for the city of South Haven itself that Van Buren Central Dispatch processed a little over 1,200 traffic stops that were conducted inside the city of South Haven. That may not account for just South Haven Police Department, but that's traffic stops that happen inside the city of South Haven. Just shy of 3,000 calls for service. You can see the breakdown there. And again, 2377-ish, and how those calls came into us just inside the city of South Haven. Now, I would say this, across the county, those percentages are about the same. 85% of our 911 calls are wireless from your cell phone. We do take text to 911, but it's a very small percentage, surprisingly. 40 calls, 40 texts inbound to us a month, and about 3 times that amount out. So here's how texting really helps us. We always say, call if you can, text if you must. Let's say that you text us, misdial us. Call 911, you didn't realize that you dialed the cell phone, you had it in your pocket, your purse. Our dispatchers call that number back, see if there's a problem. If they can't get through, they'll send you a text. So we believe that we solve about 75% of all of our inbound, or our misdial 911 calls by texting back. Imagine then, if we had to send somebody to check on that, if we can get a good location, how much time and money that we're saving by having that text function within 911. Just kind of finally here, if you want to look at that last one, kind of help you understand. I think it's important for citizens to understand the difference between the information center that's housed at the police department here in town and 911 and central dispatch. The information center is not a dispatch center. It's an information center. So while you can go there, you can pick up a phone and it will dial direct to the 911 center, or you can call and they'll transfer you over there. One of the things we encourage you to do is if you have, and you can tell your constituents, if they have something they need a police response for, they need to call Pawpaw, not South Haven. If you call 637-5151, they're going to transfer you, they need to transfer you to Van Buren Central Dispatch so that we can put it on the CAD, on the log, to dispatch an officer. It's how we track those numbers. Now, sometimes we get a little pushback because I've been transferred and I didn't get transferred. We ask that you give good information. What do you need to see an officer about? What do you want to talk to an officer about? I know people go, just send me an officer. And I appreciate the frustration, but think of yourself on the other end of the phone and you're trying to get that information and pass that information on so that at least we can get a good information to start with. And so we just want to kind of encourage people to understand that if you need a South Haven police officer, you need to talk to that officer, maybe you need their voicemail, you need their email. Call 637-5151, but make sure you tell the information clerk that's what you're looking for. Because the worst thing, none of us want to be transferred 3 times, do we? Get transferred to Pawpaw, dispatcher in Pawpaw goes, oh, you need South Haven Information Center, so we transfer you back to the Information Center. By that time, you're irritated. And so we're trying to help that and avoid that kind of issue. Other city business, of course, you have numbers here within the city. And one other thing I just mentioned, it's not on this, is people call often and they don't want to give their name. They want to be anonymous. While you can be anonymous and we don't release that information publicly, if you don't want to speak to an officer, if you don't want to speak to the officer, you don't want to give your name, it goes on as what we call a BOL. It's a be on the lookout. So it's something that the officer will come through the area and look for, but may not make contact with you unless you want contact with the police department. So you need to be very clear. And if you could just share that with your constituents, that would be awesome, because we can kind of solve those irritations that happen. And then Kate doesn't get called, and Chief Thompson doesn't get called, and you don't get called, and we can help solve that. If you have any questions or information, you can always call me. You can call that non-emergency number, get a hold of me. I'd be happy to answer your question. Any questions you have for me tonight? Clear as mud. Thank you again for the opportunity. We'd just like to make sure that our local areas are well aware of what's going on. And sometimes it seems like it's a long way to the other side, but we do cover all of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, so the minutes from February 19th had a typographical error in them.
And that has been corrected.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Oppose? Next is public comment for items on the agenda, excluding items scheduled for public hearing, and we have no public hearings tonight. So any comments on items on the agenda? And you have up to 5 minutes. Good evening.
Hi, David Veenstra, 1220 Monroe Boulevard, and I'd like to speak on agenda item number 11. Consider a letter of support for Short-Term Rental Act House Bill in the Michigan legislature. I think it's a great idea. I've been following this for a while, and the idea is to give local control. So we're not having cookie cutter legislation at the state level. This is this would permit us to have more local control over our own situation, because every community is different. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve items A through F on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through F.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Arnold,
Yes.
Hasley,
Yes.
Onuki,
Yes.
Reeser,
Yes.
Sleeper,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes, the consent agenda is approved. Next, the City Council will be asked to review the ad hoc committee to create standards of excellence or code of conduct established on the February 5th meeting to consider whether to keep the committee as created, change the committee appointments, or set a workshop for the council as a whole to meet to review and draft the code of conduct. Kate?
Yes, Mayor. So when we, I think it was back in February of 19th, we created, I'm sorry, it was February 5th. We created an ad hoc committee, which consists of George Sleeper, Jeff Arnold, and Mary Hosley, to look at the rules of conduct, the code of conduct, which is coming out of our MML training for the standards of excellence. One thing we could talk about is minutes, maybe public comment period of time, and other items to look at to kind of set up guidelines for how this board does business. Once we had set that up, I had received some concerns from some of the members that maybe there should be other people appointed, or maybe it should be a committee of the whole, rather the whole council should come out and work on this workshop. Or, have this code set at a workshop. Now, I should say that anything that does come up should probably come back and be adopted at a regular meeting. So I was just looking for guidance as to what this council would like to do, if they wanted to change the membership, if they want to, or set this for a workshop for all members to participate in. I did want to let you know, I did speak with Member Wilkins, and she is not interested in serving on an ad hoc committee at this time.
I would move to rescind the vote on February 5th and move to create a different ad hoc committee.
Okay. Rather than rescind the vote, because now that's on another meeting, rather than rescind it, maybe the motion can be to reassign. So if there's 3 members that are looking to be on this, maybe, so I would say maybe to reassign rather than rescind the vote. Because I would say you want to rescind the vote at the meeting that you're at, rather than a meeting that has been done.
My understanding is you can rescind a vote as long as the action hadn't taken place.
However you want to do it, that's fine with me.
Just a reminder that this motion was passed unanimously a month ago.
And at that time, it was there was a misunderstanding, and we were all being cautious of questioning the selection. And after the fact, I thought people had decided not to be participating, and I then found out that they did want to participate. And I know a member had raised his hand and was not identified as being interested. And so I think there was a misunderstanding by those voting at that time.
Okay. Then who are the 3 new members that you'd like to have appointed then?
I would like to see Wendy come on. We continually talk about diversity and bringing on voices of our younger constituents and board members. And that is whom I would recommend. And and for diversity reasons, considering that we are a board of 4 women, 3 men, I would like to see 2 women and 1 man on the committee.
Okay, then who are the members that you would like appointed to the committee then?
I mean, when you and I had spoken, and I know that not everyone had been talked to, but at that time you had indicated that George and Wendy were interested, and you asked if I was interested, and I said I was. And so
I guess I'm
so
a
I
little
would
confused
say
here.
Councilman Sleeper, Councilwoman Onuki, and myself.
Okay.
Can we have 4 members?
If we're having 4 members, then we're going to notice the meeting. So that just means that we're just going to have a workshop for 4 members. I'm just going to, if that's the better way to do it, then we'll just set a workshop so everybody can come. I'll hand out what we've seen with other communities, and we're going to be giving that to the council members for you all to do your work. If we're going to have a meeting, then I'm going to have some staff member there to record the meeting. Okay?
I don't see any reason to have a workshop. We had 2 of them, and on the heels of one of them is when this whole issue came up of not following Robert's rules, and the mayor made personal attacks against us, against 4 of us. So I think if we just follow Robert's rules, and if we want to delve into any deeper, I think 3 people on 1 committee could do it. But if we're going to have another workshop, I prefer not to have a workshop because it didn't achieve anything last time. And we've surely had a lot of workshops, and it's as clear as can be in Robert's rules, and I sent you and the mayor a copy of it, how we're supposed to treat each other and talk to each other with respect. If we disagree, it should be on disagreeing on issues, but never attacking other people personally, and that's what happened. So I don't see a reason for another workshop. That's just my opinion.
I think, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I appreciate the gesture. And yeah, at the meeting where we picked the ad hoc committee, I think it just kind of, the process took us by surprise. I feel like there's so many issues and things going on right now that for me, I feel like it should either be all of us or I honestly okay to just leave it as is.
So you don't need to be on it. Is that what you're saying? Or
Everyone.
everyone?
Yeah.
Or leave it as is with Mary, Jeff, and George? Is that what you meant?
I would be okay with that.
Okay.
But I do appreciate that.
I recalled at the time, and this is my recollection, that when asked who wanted to be involved, everyone raised their hand. And so then it came down to the mayor to choose three. And so she did. And the reason with three was just because an ad hoc committee, a small number, supposed to be able to work quickly, handle things. And then it wasn't unanimous, as the mayor mentioned. But then if the rest of the group was not happy with what the ad hoc committee did, they still could vote no on it, and it could be adjusted and changed as the full committee, the full council wanted. So I guess I kind of skew towards what Wendy said. Go with what we had, or we should all be in it together. That's where I lean.
George, do you have are you still interested in serving?
I'm still interested, and I think just a reminder that this would just be the initial work that would be done by the small committee, and then, the entire council will get involved after that. So I think it's a more efficient way to do it, starting with a smaller committee, and I'm sure, Wendy, if you have any input, I'd be happy to take it. I'm sure Mary would be, or Jeff would be happy to take that and incorporate that into what we're doing. So I'm okay leaving it as is myself.
Sounds like we have consensus for keeping the ad hoc committee as the council voted a month ago.
Is there a
George?
motion on that?
What?
Is there a motion on that?
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to keep the committee as it was originally laid out.
Second.
Is there any more discussion? So that is a motion to keep the ad hoc committee to create standards of excellence or a code of conduct as it was passed on February 5th. And the members are Mary Hasley, George Sleeper, and Jeff Arnold. All in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? The motion passes.
Did we have an opposed, or,
I oppose.
okay?
So did Joe.
Oh, you two voted no?
Yep.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, moving on. The new business. The city council will be asked to consider the approval of the following special event applications. Special event 2024-07, Red Flag Day Park Party, to be held on the following Fridays, May 18th, June 15th, July 20th, August 17th, and September 21st, from 11 to 6 p.m. in Stanley Johnson Park. Special event 2024-12, So Hey Sings, Community Sing-Along, to be held on the following Wednesdays, April 10th, May 9th, June 12th, July 10th, August 14th, September 11th, and October 9th, from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. in Dykeman Park. And special event 2024-13, Via Crucis, the Way of the Cross, to be held on Friday, March 29th, 2024, from 6 to 7 on Superior Street, St. Joseph Street, South Haven Street, and Monroe Boulevard. Is there a motion to pass all of these at the same time?
I would make a motion to approve special event 2024-07 Red Flag Day Park Party as read by the mayor. Special event 2024-12 Soha Sings as read by the mayor. And special event 2024-13 Via Circus as read by the mayor.
Second.
Any discussion? Just to comment that Sohei Sings is live now with no dates. It will be live. Great.
Let's take them one at a time.
Okay. So we have 3 new events coming to the city council. The first one is the Red Flag Park Party being put on by the South Haven Area Ambassadors Program in Education. They're looking to host several park parties in Stanley Johnston Park throughout the summer to promote water safety. The dates have been put in the packet, but they do have like a bad weather date kind of in the special event packet. They plan to have various booths to visit, children's activities, water safety presentations, food trucks, cornhole, and a red flag tournament. This will be happening, I believe, once a month for each month starting in May. And it'll be held from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. in Stanley Johnston Park. Would you like me to go on to the second and third one? Okay. Soha Sings, again, is a new special event. This will be the use of Dykeman Park, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. on each second Wednesday of the month from April to October. And inclement weather, they plan to be under the Huron Street Pavilion. They plan to promote community sing-alongs. The attendees would gather together singing a curated list of easy-to-follow-along songs, accompanied by acoustic guitars, drums, and potentially keyboard. They're inviting everyone to attend. The third item is Via Crucis, at least that's how I'm pronouncing it, at St. Basil Church. Again, this is a third new special event where they will be from the hours of 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Friday, March 29th, using the streets around St. Basil's Church to do a religious procession with actors taking on the roles, and with 14 stations of the cross observed on Good Friday. So they would be working with city staff to make sure roads are closed and things like that. So those are the three special events presented here tonight.
Thank you. Any more questions? All in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? The events all pass. Thank you, everyone. They look great. Next, the City Council will be asked to consider a letter of support for the Short-Term Rental Act, House Bill 5438, introduced by State Representative Joey Andrews of District 38. Kate
Well,
Griffin.
thank you. We have been given a draft of the House Bill 5438, which has been included in the packet. There was a link. Also provided in the packet is the letter for support regarding this short-term rental legislation, as well as we do have, I think it's Allison, from Representative Andrews' office to answer any questions you may have. Okay, Allison, come on up.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. Representative Andrews' presence was also requested in St. Joe at their meeting this evening, so for geographical reasons, that's kind of why I'm here this evening. But I'm happy to go over the contents of the bill, where the bill sits now, and then take any questions if that sounds all right with everybody. Awesome. So the biggest part of the bill is probably the proposed opt-in excise tax. It's 6%, and of that 6%, at least 5% is to be allocated to the local units of government in which the short-term rentals reside. The 1% or up to $1 million, whichever cap is hit first, that goes to the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, as well as the Treasury, just for the administration of the act. But the rest of the funds are to be redirected back to the locals. And a preliminary estimate kind of what we're looking at for the revenue generated statewide is between $32 to $64 million. That is kind of a more modest estimate just because we don't have a statewide registry to kind of capture all of the short-term rentals that are being operated in the state. But that's kind of where we're at with the excise tax. The other piece here is there's a registry and database that would be created, and it's meant to complement local registries, not to replace them in any way, and just to kind of aid with enforcement and for giving municipalities another tool to check against this registry and seeing if there are any short-term rentals that are operating as like homesteads when they're really kind of more of like a commercial business. And then for the zoning and local ordinances and stuff, all that local regulation we want to stay in place as is. So nothing is being touched there in terms of directing how locals are to zone or regulate short-term rentals. So it's really just kind of meant to empower regulation for like the safety of welfare and public health, those kinds of things. And then there is an expansion of the bed tax as well. It would automatically expand to short-term rentals. And there's about 9 bills in the package that just are all directed towards these CVB bills, and that would just allow them to invest these funds in both childcare and housing. It's a need that we've heard quite a bit about from areas within our district and even like in Grand Traverse County. So that's kind of the layout of the bill. The bill's currently before the local government committee. We have yet to have a hearing. I think it's been rescheduled to April 10th now. So we are going to have a hearing on that, and we're accepting any feedback, letters of support, or other forms of feedback you might have for us. So please just let us know if there's any concerns you have.
George?
First of all, I want to compliment Representative Andrews because he, in his drafting of this bill, came to South Haven and held a workshop in our library that I attended. And it was very informative. I learned a lot about what he was doing, and I was really very impressed. So thank you for that. I also want to thank Representative Andrews for his working with the Michigan Municipal League. I know their initial indication is that they're very positive on this bill. So thank you for that also.
Thank you.
So I'm
Joe.
going to ask these questions, and maybe as you were speaking, I didn't get it because you went very fast. Of the money collected on the excise tax, how is it going to be distributed, and how much will the government take itself? So for every $100, first question, what percentage will come back to the communities? And then the second question is, when it comes back to the communities, how do they determine how much South Haven gets versus St. Joe versus Detroit? Is it based on the number of short-term rentals in that community? So can you explain that?
Yes. So the way it is set up, at a minimum, 5% of the total that is collected, and it's collected based on where the short-term rentals are located. So of that, at least 5% is going back to the locals, and then up to 1% or $1 million, whichever's hit first. And just going off of the projected revenues that we've seen, I'm guessing the $1 million cap will be hit first. Then the rest is directed to be returned back to the locals. So it could be more than 5%. I'm not sure exactly by how much.
Wait a minute. You're telling me 95% is going to be, maybe I misunderstood because you're shaking your head. You said 5% comes back to us. What happened to the other 95?
I'm sorry,
I missed that.
it's 1% of the excise tax, or up to $1 million, is what goes to the state for administration.
Okay, 1%.
Yeah, the rest are, I'm sorry, I meant 5% of the 6% tax is
Ah.
what I meant. My apologies.
Okay, thank you. And then how do they determine what each community gets?
Yes,
Is
and
it based on the size of the community or the number of short-term rentals?
yeah, so it's based on the number of short-term rentals that are present.
So in this case, we have a lot more short-term rentals in St. Joe. St. Joe is a lot bigger than us, but we in effect would get more money than they would because we have more short-term rentals.
Yes, if you have more short-term rentals, you would be getting more money.
And then when we get this money, we can spend it as we see fit.
Yes, it goes towards general funding purposes, so whatever needs you may have, you're welcome to use those funds.
That would be determined by city council.
Yes,
Great. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mary?
I would just like to echo George's comments. Yeah, Michigan Municipal League spoke highly of this because it's the first legislation that doesn't try to control what the local government does. It leaves us to make our own decisions within not just the zoning, but regulatory ordinances that we manage.
I just have a question. The excise tax is only for short-term rentals and not all lodging.
Yes, only for short-term rentals.
So to me, that sounds punitive on short-term rentals.
So the way, when we were speaking with MML, the way it was kind of explained to us when they brought us this bill language was that there are costs of short-term rentals that local governments can't really capture any benefits on, like they can with, hotel lodging or bed and breakfast, I believe, have regulations too. So this is kind of, they would like to see parity between the two. So that's kind of what has brought us to this language and this point in the bill-making process.
Kate, do some short-term rentals pay into the Visitors Bureau?
Some do. I believe it's 10 bedrooms or more pay
Okay.
in. But they're all going, that goes to the CVB. It does not come to the city.
Okay. So are other, housing and childcare are such huge issues. Are other people going to pay in? It sounds like this is just CVBs.
Yes, it was just to expand the purview of what they could spend on. Some CVBs believe they already have the authority to do this. So it was just kind of our way of putting it in black letters in law that it is something that they would have the purview to spend those funds on.
So more money into those pots?
Yeah.
For-
Well, theoretically, if they wish to put it in there, they don't necessarily have to. But just since different communities have different needs, if that's something the CVB saw as necessary, it would be an option for them.
I was surprised that there weren't more or any co-sponsors from the shoreline of Michigan. The bill's co-sponsors?
I would have to check on that. I believe Betsy Kofia was a co-sponsor on it, and I know she's got shoreline area as well.
Okay,
Yeah, I would have to double check. I don't remember off the top of my head who all
that's
sponsored.
okay. Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Wendy?
Oh, I just had a comment. I just wanted to thank you and Representative Andrews for bringing this to our attention. I am really happy to vote in favor of this, so thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else?
May I make a motion?
Sure.
I would make a motion to support the letter in slightly amended form where we strike zoning and simply have it read regulations.
Support.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes? Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Next, the City Council will be asked to consider approving Resolution 2024-11, a resolution to set a public hearing on the application for a redevelopment liquor license from Kitchen Tribes LLC to take place during the regular City Council meeting on March 18, 2024. Kate?
I'm going to hand this one off to Griffin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before you this evening is a application or request from Kitchen Tribes LLC seeking local government approval to apply for a redevelopment liquor license. For those of you not familiar, there is a public act that permits the Michigan Liquor Control Commission to issue new public on-premises liquor licenses to businesses that are enhancing what they determine to be the quality of life in their community. So I've linked quite a bit of information on the background of redevelopment liquor licenses. This is a process that local units of government and the state of Michigan have created to issue additional liquor license to communities that are already hitting their statutory cap. So, for example, for a business who hasn't been able to acquire one of the pre-distributed ones in each community, this is an alternative process they can choose to go through. And by meeting certain criteria, they can become eligible and go through an application process with the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. One of the requirements is they must obtain a recommendation from the local legislative body, in this case, you all as the South Haven City Council, for their application to even be considered by the MLCC. As a friendly reminder, the MLCC is ultimately the body that will determine whether or not to issue a permit. They are the ones that really will go through a rigorous kind of review and inspection and kind of permitting process to determine whether or not to issue this. But the first step is for the City Council to consider making a recommendation or not of this application. I would like to note that the South Haven City Council did adopt a policy to evaluate these types of requests in 2009. Based on my research, I found a few examples of where these types of liquor licenses have been granted here in the past. The most recent one I could find was for Los Ranchos at the old Save-A-Lot building when it was redeveloped, was a business that went through the redevelopment liquor license process. So before you all this evening is more background information, if you will, about the redevelopment liquor license process, the application letter, which addresses many, if not all, of the criteria noted in the city council policy, some additional background information, and ultimately the action being brought before you all is a resolution to set the public hearing on the application for a future city council meeting. As a note, it's specifically outlined in the city's ordinance that this type of action requires a resolution to set this public hearing. That's why there's a resolution and we're not just doing a voice vote like we do for most other public hearings. But I'm happy to answer any other questions, and I do believe Mr. Brooks is here, at least he was earlier this evening. If there are questions, perfect. If there are any specific questions for him about his request.
So Griffin, we're kind of approving it, but only to send it on to a public hearing. Obviously, if we don't want to approve it, we wouldn't want to send it on to a public hearing. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So if this evening what's being asked is for you all to consider whether or not to set the public hearing for your ultimate consideration. If you do all decide to deny an application or not move forward with it, they're the same local government approval form. So if you look on page 82 of your packet, it is actually a resolution of whether or not you approve it, and if you don't approve it, you're supposed to give your specific criteria. So why did you disapprove of the recommendation? But I guess theoretically you all could decide if you didn't want to move forward with this to just not schedule the public hearing, because we can't do anything if you don't schedule a public hearing. But the more appropriate way to move forward, if you would like to not recommend this, would still be schedule the public hearing, and then during the public hearing eventually voice reasons for disapproval so we can document those appropriately.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mary?
So I think, Griffin, from your comments, that the limitations that are in the 2009 resolution have not been met, so there's no reason, because there's discussion about no more than 10 redevelopment liquor licenses and no more than 50 total. So,
Can you phrase that again? I'm sorry.
so in Exhibit A,
Yep, the policy.
yep, there was discussion about limitations of liquor licenses, so that would not be, we have not hit those limits, so
That's my understanding.
that's what I gathered
Yes,
from your
that,
comments.
yes, thank you. Yes, that's my understanding, is that if you all would like to recommend this, that you still could and you wouldn't be in violation of your policy.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Are you ready for a motion?
I would move to approve Resolution 2024-11, a resolution setting a public hearing on the application for a redevelopment liquor license for Kitchen Tribes LLC to take place during the regular city council meeting on March 18th, 2024.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? If not, all in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? And the motion passes. Next, the city council will be asked to provide direction in the form of a motion and vote regarding changes, if any, to be implemented regarding, 1, an ordinance amending sections 201.6, 201.8, 201.13, 201.19, and 901 of the South Haven zoning ordinance relating to waterfront development and regulating floating homes and floating commercial structures. And number 2, an ordinance amending Chapter 38 of the South Haven Code of Ordinances to create a new Article 5 entitled Floating Homes, to provide for the licensing of floating homes within marinas prior to the public hearing set for March 18th, 2024. Kate?
All right, so we're coming back to you, city council members, to walk through the floating home ordinances. I know we've got some communication from Member Hosley. We've also shared communication that we received from, I think it was Woodland Harbor Club. So we've shared that with you, and we do have a public hearing set for this ordinances for March 18th. But to make sure that what we're presenting is what encapsulates what council wants, we wanted to walk through some of the comments that we've received, as well as any of the comments that are in the packet with you all to make sure that we're on the same page. We're also going to be looking for just, I guess, some motions here to find out, are the changes that are being presented, are they what the entire council wants? So with that, Griffin is going to help walk us through some of these kind of notations here and get some consensus where we'd like to go.
And you're going to be asking us for a motion
Yes.
and to take action
It would
tonight.
be, it would be most helpful, so we've received, we appreciate and have received some really detailed feedback and suggestions from Councilperson Hosley. Thank you for your work on that. I know that was something that was discussed at the previous meeting. But this is being brought back to you all because it's fantastic that we've received this from one member, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's represented by the rest of the group.
Right.
So we wanted to spend a little bit of time with you all this evening, where I'm happy to facilitate, a little bit of a discussion through some of kind of the key points of the ordinance. I also know, Councilperson Hosley put some comments together that she may want to discuss with the group. There may be other members of the city council who have questions or comments or perspective changes that they'd want to talk through. Just figured it would be more productive to bring this back to the entire group, because at the end of the day, we are looking for a motion and a vote that really formalizes the direction the council would like to go with this ordinance, so that staff is clear on what changes you all would like us to make in preparation for the public hearing scheduled for the next meeting on March 18th. So with that, I'm happy to kind of work through some of these topics, but I guess I'll leave it to you, Madam Mayor, if there's a preference on how you'd like to move forward.
You could start.
Well, I would first like to move to suspend Robert's Rules of Order so that this would be a true discussion and not limited, people are not limited to 2 comments.
That's fine.
Oh, and I would just also like to say, we also got correspondence, Kate, maybe you were not copied, from Andrea Hall.
I did see that, and it has been shared with you all. That has been shared. But I think that maybe you encapsulated that in some of your comments because you were referred back to the ad hoc committee.
Yeah, you had mentioned Mr. Lafredo and hadn't mentioned Andrea Hall, and also previous councilman Steve Schlock had sent in comments.
Yes, I did not say that we received all those folks' comments. My apologies.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. So if we were to change the definitions, which is included in the zoning part, would we have to send that back to Planning Commission and have them reapprove that and send it back to us? So it probably
Yes.
would not be something that we could do prior to the public hearing on March 18th.
That would be correct. That's my
Okay.
understanding.
Well, can we postpone that public hearing through a vote?
Of course you can. So if that's the direction you all would like to move, again, that's what we're looking for. Is at the end of the day, it's up to you all, and Kate and I will do the best we can to help you navigate, what that looks like. But yes, Mr. Sleeper, to your point, that the zoning ordinance, those recommendations have to start from the Planning Commission. So if you all would like to change what they've already sent to you, it would go back to them for at least their at least their review. The earliest we could do that would be the April Planning Commission meeting, which would get this all back to you all, mid-April. Theoretically, there's still time to, bring this back for you all to do another introduction and a public hearing before the end of the moratorium, which is the beginning of June. So we could do that. We'd just be cutting it a lot closer. But we'll leave that up to you all. Maybe that's a good place to start. And Madam Mayor, I guess just stop me if I'm getting out of turn. But
Nope, go
maybe
right ahead.
starting with the zoning ordinance is the best place to start. It's probably the simpler of the two proposed ordinances. So really, I'm going to draw your attention to probably two decision-making points within the zoning ordinance for you all to consider. The first one being it is looking to add new definitions to the zoning ordinance. For example, floating commercial structure, floating home, houseboat, and then it changes the definition of marina, which is important when it comes to the second piece, so the regulatory ordinance. So really the first part here is just if there are wording changes, so specific wording changes that you all would like to see to those definitions, it would be helpful to hear those from you all. The other part of it is permitted uses within the B3 waterfront business district. So the way the zoning ordinance is written, it includes the floating commercial structure, floating home, and houseboats within that. Let me see. It includes, just the the water-based businesses as approved uses within the B3 district. Notably, though, that is not creating a land use of a floating home. What it just does is say a floating homes can exist within marinas, which are already allowed. Marinas are then, floating homes are then addressed in more detail in the regulatory aspect. So I'm sure I caused all kinds of confusion with that, so I'm sorry, but I guess I'll hand it off to you guys. Are there changes with the verbiage of these definitions or on what things are allowed in the B3 district?
Can you tell us what we're looking at on our screen for the definitions? The red line is from feedback or?
This is,
No,
are
the-
you looking at
This is from,
Councilmember Hosley's document?
No, I'm just looking at.
Yeah,
oh,
so
okay,
I'm
it's in
on
the
I'm on
packet.
page 97.
Right,
And the red language is language that was added, so it's not currently in there.
right.
And then there's some different markups of some red language, which is different drafts throughout the process. But the red language is language that would be added.
Okay, I was just wondering about the strike through, like how entity was changed to structure item.
That
and what
is-
the thinking was behind that.
Sure, that's the most recent feedback from the city attorney. It's recommended that the original drafts that were prepared with assistance from Nick Curcio, the previous city attorney, get reviewed by the new city attorney, and that level of markups are from their review at the end of January.
Okay. So can I just ask you one more question?
Sure.
Of course.
If we wanted to incorporate the attorney's changes, regardless of what else we add or take away today, would that still need to go back to planning commission?
No,
No,
this
okay.
this version exactly as it is here was what already
Okay.
went through planning commission.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead.
So, Steve Schlock is the one who raised an issue with regard to floating homes and whether dredging, dragline, similar activities would be prohibited with how the water-based business is defined. And it appears there's a differing of opinion on whether it would or would not. So in my marked up copy, the red that I put added at the end of floating commercial structure is what came from the ad hoc committee recommendations. And I think what would be beneficial is that when the planning commission voted on these definitions, it was not unanimous. I and one other planning commissioner thought that additional work would be beneficial, but we were not the prevailing majority. However, subsequent to that, we have gotten other communication from someone who is very fluent with activities along the river. And I do have concern that with the information that led up to the definitions, that potentially dredging could be prohibited with the way water-based business is defined. And in looking at this more in detail over the weekend, I realized that water-based business did not appear in any of the minutes from the ad hoc committee. And so then I was just, it was no longer clear exactly why the way that the water-based business was is that floating commercial structures or items lawfully in are not considered water-based businesses and are not permitted in the city. It seemed like you were trying to cover to ensure that, like the Idler and other water-based restaurants were going to be covered by the ordinance, but it appears that the net may have been cast too broadly. So that is my concern, is that it's not identical to how the ad hoc committee had recommended it, and I think the ad hoc committee did expect to have dredging and dragline in there, and it looked like they intended to have restaurants in there. And so it's not clear why the water-based business was added, because I couldn't find it in the minutes. I don't know if you can add any clarity to that.
I can try. I can tell you that I spoke with the city attorney today, and with 2 words, we may be able to clarify some of this. So for floating commercial structure, if there's a concern that is going to prevent construction barges or dredging, which was not the intent, we could just add for a specific commercial purpose other than as a means of transportation or construction on water. So if that's something you all would like to see, we could add those 2 words, and it probably clarifies that confusion there. I can tell you that it was very intentional to preserve the existing uses of the Idler and Admiral Jack's. Mm-hmm. And it was also very intentional to, at this time at least, not allow those types of uses to, not allow additional of those types of uses. Again, if that's something City Council or the Planning Commission would like to see changed at some part in time, they could. So if that provides the clarity you're looking for, the language of making sure construction barges and dredging is allowed, I'm sure there's a wording way to fix that. There was never an intent to exclude those, but to preserve the existing businesses and not allow additional at this time, that was very intentional.
I think you got it.
So I'll also go back to, I appreciate the comments. It's helpful. So I guess what I'm looking for, though, is if there are changes you all would like to see once we ask some of these questions, if it's either one at a time and we're taking single votes, or we're going to take a list and do it at the end, it would be really helpful if at some point we formalize what changes the majority of council would like to see, because I'm assuming we're probably going to talk about a handful of them, and that's fantastic. We'll incorporate whatever you all would like. I'm just trying to keep us as organized as possible.
Why don't you move along and just tell us what page you're on.
Okay. So I guess I'm still looking at page 97. So
Great.
There we've got definitions of floating commercial structure and floating home.
Okay. Got it.
potential change to floating commercial structure we just talked about was if it provides the clarity the city council is looking for, after as a means of transportation or construction could be added, and that would likely alleviate any potential lack of clarity related to barges or dredging or those types of things. So I'll let you all consider that. Right after that, we get to the definition of floating home, and then the page after 98, we get to the definition of houseboat. Are there changes to those two you would like to see? I mean, I definitely recognize there is a thin line differentiating those two, but we're trying to do the best we can because we're trying to create regulations for one and not create regulations for the other.
So in looking at Saugatuck's floating home ordinance, I appreciate trying not to regulate one but the other, but I think there was the concern, looking through the minutes of the ad hoc committee, that a houseboat could become a floating home potentially. And so they had, in Saugatuck's, they had a list of criteria to evaluate whether it would or would not be a floating home. And, I mean, and was houseboat separated out specifically versus other boats because of the similarity? But there is no regulation, but I know that there was concern that that would be the next type of boat to become rented.
So, yes, the differentiation was made between floating home and houseboat because those were the two closest. Then you're going to evolve to other types of vessels that no one at any of these boards and commissions I have been talking to about this really want to get into the space of regulating those at this time. So I think that's the purpose of the differentiation, is it's the closest line. But in regard to, I know some of the concerns related to this whole conversations have been about nuisances, noise and parking and all of these other things. Those could theoretically apply to almost anything. So you're right, noise and too many people on them and loud music and drinking and parking, and I mean, that could happen on a floating home, and it could happen on a houseboat, and it could happen on a powerboat, and it could happen on a sailboat, and at a certain point, we have to draw a line and go, we're talking about regulation here right now and not in those other areas. So I think that's been pretty clear since the beginning of where we're trying to draw that line. I think the difficult part is in putting together definitions because they are similar and yet different. So you mentioned kind of a list of criteria. If that's the way you'd like to move this definition towards, I'm happy to do that. I would just need you all to tell me what you all would like it to say.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the best way. It's just, as I had indicated with the houseboats, the concern was that will be the next nuisance.
We will still have ordinances that exist to address nuisances. So, I mean, that was one of the perks that I'm sure you saw looking at the minutes of the ad hoc committee, is Chief Thompson came in at one time and talked to the committee about the existing noise ordinance and how we can pursue individuals who are potentially violating the noise ordinance. I mean, we have nuisance ordinance on the books that can be used as necessary.
So the ad hoc committee had recommended that both for floating homes and for the houseboats, that it be specifically stated that they, all relevant city rules, regulations are applicable. But those were not incorporated. Was there a reason?
We talked quite a bit at the meeting 2 weeks ago about the evolution of getting from the ad hoc committee to their recommendations to how we got here.
And I said, and I'm asking, is there a specific reason that these were not incorporated? And I also would like to remind everyone that actually the motion at the April 2023 City Council meeting was to direct staff to move forward with the recommendations presented by the Houseboat and Floating Home Regulation Ad Hoc Committee. So, you know, I think many people who saw that and heard that thought that many more of the recommendations would have been incorporated.
I'm happy to incorporate any changes the city council would like to see.
So my opinion is, we don't need an ordinance to say, follow your ordinances. And that's what this addition says to me. So, and going back to the addition of or construction in the floating commercial structure, I think we are covered by the further wording later on that says utilize land-based utilities. Most of these construction barges do not use land-based utilities. So I personally am okay with the definitions the way they are now. And I am concerned that in an effort to try to get something perfect, we're not going to have something in time before the moratorium expires. So I feel personally, I appreciate all the work that Mary has gone into to try to improve things, but I think, I looked at the potential changes and I'm okay with things the way they are.
I agree with George.
I also spoke to the city attorney today about some of these in preparation, and the other thing that is probably important to share is, you know, he mentioned that it's not uncommon for city councils to put ordinances on the books, and then as situations present themselves, if aspects need additional clarity at some point in the future, courts tend to grant, my understanding, I am not an attorney, so I'm not trying to represent myself as one, but what was communicated to me was courts tend to give a lot of deference to local legislative bodies towards making clarifications down the road as needed if there is situations that arise where there is lack of clarity. So I say that because I tend to agree that the way this definition of floating commercial structure is written, particularly with some of the conversation that we're going to have on the record, hopefully making it very clear that construction barges and dredging, those types of uses were not intended to be prevented, that we would be fine. But if at some point in the future there's lack of clarity or confusion about that, the city council would always have the opportunity to try to clarify that down the road. That's not to say you can't now, that's up to you all, but I do tend to agree that if you all want to move forward, we're probably okay with that item. I know there are many others that have been brought to our attention that people may feel differently about.
Okay.
Moving on to the definition of marina. This was more of a clarification amendment. The existing definition of marina says something along the lines of a boat basin that's going to provide all of these things, where the committee and later committees really clarified that, no, a marina's a place where boats moor and may provide some or all of these things. So we tried to provide some clarity there. And then it also added the important line for the conversation we'll have about the regulatory aspect, that a marina in the B3 district may host floating homes, subject to a permit granted by the city clerk pursuant to blah, blah, blah. This was the key piece that we discussed a little bit a couple weeks ago, where we made the shift from the original recommendation from the ad hoc committee talking about a special land use, and we pivoted away from treating houseboats as a land use and instead as something that could be permitted by a regulatory ordinance in a land use, which is a marina, and as a way to attempt to avoid creating the grandfathering that I know has created some frustration related to short-term rental conversations. So that's where we're at and how we kind of got to where we did with marina.
Any concerns there? Moving on.
Well, yeah,
Oh.
so it talks about zoning approvals. No, so the mooring of houseboats and other vessels, including excursion vessels, is permitted with a marina, within a marina, subject to other applicable city ordinance requirements, but with no needed additional zoning approvals. I just, and it goes on about being granted by the city clerk. So did you talk to the attorney about having it being the city in general and not specifying a specific employee?
I have not. The city clerk's a pretty standard language for how most ordinances in the regulatory code are written on who's issuing those types of permits. I mean, there's half a dozen miscellaneous ones that are written that way in the existing regulatory code.
I think a specific person is better than general.
Then some of the regulatory ordinance would need to be changed because some of it's being done by the zoning administrator, so it's inconsistent. Okay.
Okay, page 99. Any comments there?
Page 99 really just ends the marina definition we talked a little bit about. You get to page 100, which is the water-based business.
Yep.
We've talked a little bit about this earlier. This is, I tended to make sure that things more like the Friends Goodwill and the Sunseeker and some of these other types of, charter-type vessels are still permitted. That's also why that's listed later when you see water-based businesses allowed as uses by right.
Okay.
So those are really the changes in the zoning ordinance aspect. Again, as Councilman Sleeper mentioned, we can definitely make some changes to definitions if that's what a majority of you would like to see. At that point, a motion and a recommendation would be preferred. At that point, we can make those changes and bring it to to the Planning Commission at the April meeting. If there are not substantive changes you all are looking to make, we can bring this back to you all for consideration at the next meeting.
So the water-based business paragraph was the last change.
Yes, for the exception of if you go to page 103, water-based business is included as
Oh,
an
I see
additional,
that. Thank you.
additional use by right.
Okay.
So, under floating commercial structure, so you had talked about an amendment, and also the ad hoc committee had suggested that it include that it's not a houseboat, and that was not included. So, I mean, if we're going to include at this point in time, it looked like you were recommending if any amendment happened, it would happen with the floating commercial structure.
I'm not recommending any
No, I
necessary
said-
changes at this time. It's up to you all what you'd like to see.
But in your discussion with the legal attorney, that was the only term that had discussed.
We
the
found that as an
potential.
option that could address some of the confusion that some of you had raised this week.
Is there more discussion from other council members?
Just addressing that, as far as the addition of, and is not a houseboat, right after that, it says shall not be used for habitation. So to me, that excludes it being a houseboat.
Houseboats have living accommodations.
Right, so a floating commercial structure is not gonna be able to be a houseboat because it can't be used for habitation by the definition that's there in the current draft.
Right, but they specifically included the floating home also just to ensure, it avoids any floating home that is currently there from becoming approved.
Any floating home that's already there is probably going to get to continue to be there. Prior to being a floating home in place prior to the implementation of this ordinance, it's probably going to get to stay.
Was there anything brought in during the moratorium that would be questionable?
Yes, and questionable is maybe a good way to put it. I think we've worked through with them and gotten sufficient evidence to, be comfortable that it was brought in appropriately, but questionable could be a good way to put it.
Okay.
Those are some conversations probably for city council to have about a very unique situation down the road at some point. I think everyone's of the mind that the priority is get legislation on the books, and then we can address what could or couldn't be potential violations of a moratorium
Okay.
afterwards.
Any
If the
more?
city council's comfortable, I can move to the regulatory ordinance aspect, and we can have a little bit of discussion there. This one is a little bit, well, not a little bit, this one is kind of completely new. This is proposing a new chapter. So I'm going to go to page 109, but I'll highlight, kind of right up front. Wendy, I know you mentioned earlier about, what did the red mean and what did the other ones? This whole chapter is new. The red changes are just the changes that the new city attorney proposed at the end of January. But again, I say it that way just for the whole city council to recognize that this chapter does not presently exist in the ordinance. You all would be considering the addition of a new chapter.
Okay.
Or a new article within a chapter. So again, it starts out with a variety of different definitions. We move on to the fact that we are requiring a permit. We are requiring a permit to moor one of these things, one of these floating homes, in addition to if you would like to rent one of them. So you need a permit regardless. Then there are sections, the next section is about the different materials needed to make application for a permit. Things such as proof that you own it, site plan information, a copy of the certificate of acceptability issued by the Michigan Bureau of Construction Codes. We discussed this a little bit a couple weeks ago. This is what Laura, the regulatory agency at the state, told us one of these things would need. So that's the construction code aspect. That's the minimum construction requirement piece. And then number 6, I know lots of people had brought up concerns with renting, so a statement indicating whether or not it would be used for rentals. If so, some additional information is required, including smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, those types of things. And then moving on to proof of insurance, description of the type of floating home, length, width, kind of general information. The fact the city council would have the right to set a fee for this annual permit that floating homes would need. And then we get into some other application requirements. These are types of things that'll be, looked for when reviewing these applications. So things like maximum heights. They have to be at edges of a dock. Not more than 2 are going to be allowed in any particular marina. That they need to be connected to the city water system. So those types of requirements. Then we get into violations can be pursued as civil infractions, and then a revocation process very similar to that exists for short-term rentals. A lot of this was based off of what we have in a short-term rental ordinance. The reason it's not in the short-term rental ordinance is for the reasons I mentioned earlier about trying to not treat these as land uses, but treat this strictly as a regulatory program. So again, it's a little bit easier to make changes to the proposed regulatory chapter. This chapter would not need to go back to the city council, so if there are.
You mean go back to the
Excuse me,
planning
would
commission?
not need to go back to the planning commission, yes, thank you. So if there are changes you all would like to see, we as staff will make notes, and if there's majority, we are happy to make those changes and bring that back to you at the next meeting.
And it does appear that under like 38-94, the city clerk is the officer issuing the permits, so I guess I wasn't clear how that was different from the zoning ordinance, as discussed earlier.
I saw that too.
So, if I didn't close it out. But if you go back to the original cover memo, I'm sorry to make you guys jump around so much. I know it's tough when we've got a lot of different pages. Again, I tried to really summarize some of the notable topics that city council may have interest in. So again, things like definitions, the fact that right now we're requiring an annual registration and inspection. The maximum number, so that's 2 per marina, some of the application requirements, some of the inspection requirements. Are there any of those kind of topic areas you all would like to talk about in more detail?
Yeah, so I've heard from several people who definitely do not want these in the city marinas, and the best way to ensure that is putting it in the regulatory code. That's the biggest thing that I've heard. And one other thing is, so 2 in a 100-slip marina is totally different than 2 in a 10-slip marina. So, and it would be nice to have a list of the specific marinas and the numbers so that we know what would go in there. A recommendation to me was to limit it to 2%. So if it's a 10-slip marina, there wouldn't be room, capacity.
2 per what? I'm sorry.
2%
2%
of the total docks in the marina?
That could be an option. I mean, you all would have the right to, change it to, instead of a fixed number. We wrote that and figured a fixed number was easy. When you start to do percentages, it can get a little more complicated because not all of them have, clean numbers like that. I can't answer your question. There's 29 marinas or things that would fall under that definition that would be allowed those.
And how many are 10, 50? What are?
I don't have the specific number of slips for all 29 in front of me right now.
Because that would be beneficial, because again, 2 in a 10 marina slip are totally different than 2 in a 100 marina slip. And again, not having them in the city marinas. I'm kind of going.
If I may just break in, that's just for the floating homes, correct?
Correct.
Griffin, you spoke to that at the last meeting that they're not allowed in their city marinas. It's Southside specifically is a
That's
transient
correct.
marina.
So if you'd like to see that as an ordinance, that's something that, Councilperson Hosley is bringing up. But to your point, yes, they're not allowed right now. They're not allowed by the lease agreements. My understanding is the lease agreement that we use was approved by the Harbor Commission and the City Council a few years ago. It has not changed, in substance since then, so.
And specifically does call out that it must be a vessel that may that operates under its own power to be moored there. Moreover, it kind of goes into, I believe it's the Coast Guard's definition as to what a vessel is, having a bilge, having directional equipment on there, having all sorts of things. So that's what we're looking for, because you want to make sure that those marina facilities are being utilized by boaters.
But to the points some of you are making, to your point, yes, we're confident these are not allowed, floating homes are not allowed in the municipal marinas right now. There is no intent to add them to the municipal marinas. I don't think anyone has ever talked about wanting to add these to the municipal marinas. But if you would feel more comfortable having that dictated by ordinance, that is something that is in the purview of the city council, and you all would have the right to do that.
And I was thinking that every now and then there's a special use, like we had a deal with Chad Bard to run a charter fishing out of the Southside Marina. But I don't believe anyone up here is going to allow any kind of short-term rentals at any of our public marinas, so I'm comfortable with the way it's
Correct,
written.
yeah, the way the standard slip agreement is written is there's no commercial use allowed. I've personally, I personally write the letters if we get, word that someone may be doing that. I mean, that's part of what I do on a day-to-day basis. If we have people who want to do commercial uses in the municipal marinas, they have to get commercial license agreements, and those specifically get brought before the city council for approval.
And for the application requirements, is that going to be a verified statement or just a simple sign it without any ramifications for false statements? And confirming, if there's been any remodeling, any change of mooring location.
Those types of changes, I think, are why we proposed the annual process. So those things would essentially have to get renewed or have to get resubmitted on an annual basis. To your point about a statement or a verified statement, we don't have an ordinance in place at this time, so we haven't put together what those specific types of things would look like. I don't have an application together at this time. Right now, you all have in front of you what I have.
I know, but like the short-term rental application now says it's a verified statement, but it's not because it's not notarized. So that's why I'm asking what is
I
it?
expect it would be something similar to what we have for our short-term rental permits right now.
And I appreciate that you relied on Lara for the construction codes, but are you aware of it ever being used for houseboats?
No, and that was something I brought up a little bit, a couple weeks ago,
So-
is I'm not. And I think if anything, that is something that if you're looking to limit the use of houseboats, you're probably feeling pretty good about, because no, I don't know if they're actually have issued these, but it is what the state told us these would fall under, and I'm going to defer to them as the subject matter experts when it comes to the construction codes.
And so, I looked at that, and, there were some recommendations from the ad hoc committee that were not incorporated for them, and, going to flotation and buoyancy. How are they deciding the occupancy of these houseboats?
I don't think there's a occupancy requirement presently.
So they could have 20 people. How do we know what the buoyancy is?
So if you look at section 3894H, these flotation systems shall be designed to acceptable marine engineering and naval architecture principles, and they should get approved and sealed by a licensed professional from the person submitting the application. That was written that way because we did not want to put additional burden on our team who doesn't have the expertise in determining buoyancy, for example. So what we can do is if, as part of their application, they have to submit one by a credentialed professional that was setting the baseline of a safety standard that we were going to put in place.
A safety standard that you haven't set yet? Right. That you said you put in place?
the proposed safety standard isn't written in the ordinance.
You'd have to imagine someone spending the money on a houseboat, whatever, would want it to float to protect their investment, and they would want to regulate the number of people in it so that they don't sink it. I don't think that we need to regulate. I don't believe that's something we need to weigh into. And we talked about you said 29 marinas. If we'd say 3 of them are ours, or, well, 5 of them are ours. I also don't like the idea of us regulating what people do with their own businesses. I wouldn't tell the Golden Brown what donuts they could serve or can't serve. But should they serve safe donuts? Absolutely, and we would do that, but I wouldn't tell them what kind of donuts or where to put their donuts. So I don't like the idea of that kind of legislation.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not simply donuts, it's the impact on the immediately adjacent properties whose property values can be deteriorated by improper use, and contamination of the river if things are not done properly, and harassment of wildlife, as Dr. Hall had mentioned that she witnessed, and things being thrown over the floating home into the river. So it's not simply whether there's sprinkles on donuts.
And that was, so apparently that's a bad analogy.
So-
Dr. Hall also talked about the sewage, parking, fire inspection,
Yep.
flotation, our inspections, and Griffin addressed all of those at the last meeting. The only thing we didn't get to was the inspections, but you actually did a great job on that and did some follow-up and talked to Chief Hines. So I think we've got that covered, and the only thing that was left was noise on the roof deck. And we have a noise ordinance for that. Chief Thompson spoke about that at the ad hoc committee. So I'm pretty comfortable with at least how the regulatory portion is written, especially knowing that, as Griffin said, we can change that anytime. So if we missed something, if we forgot something, I feel like we can move forward on that, like starting on 109.
And you're not
portion.
grandfathered when it comes to regulatory ordinances. So, that's something I think is important for you all to recognize. I mean, if we issue a certificate or a permit or whatever we're calling it for the first year, it's an annual process. If 2 months in, you decide you all want to change it, they'd get the rest of their 1 year with the permit they got issued, but by the time they come for a renewal, they'd have to hit that new requirement to, get a new one. So, I mean, you would have the opportunities to make changes at some point in time. I mean, that's not without risk, of course, but, I mean, that's the difference between a zoning and then a regulatory program like this.
Yeah, and those are all very valid points. If the same criteria had been incorporated into this ordinance for regulatory as similar is done for short-term rentals, many things are missing, and many of the ad hoc committee recommendations are missing. For example, the paved parking spaces, those are not in there. You're relying on the 1.5 parking spaces per the marina, and I believe that that's deficient. And there is nothing with regard to the spatial separation of the units, which was recommended by the ad hoc committee, and 2 of the 3 floating homes are probably 4 feet within each other.
Can I break in there? Can I ask, how does that occur? Is the spatial, the space between, that was recommended by the ad hoc committee, is that just between 2 floating homes, or is that between a floating home and a house and a boat? Was that clear?
Griffin?
The reason why I'm asking is because docks are constructed the way that they are, and I believe all of the docks, but for save a very small portion, are all fixed docks in this harbor. So if you're gonna be asking for 8 feet of separation, how does that occur?
So it's actually not requiring 8 feet of separation as it's written. Depending on whether it's 8 feet or less, different construction codes apply. So that's how it comes into play for safety and fire hazard.
Which codes apply then?
As per my recommendation, taken verbatim from the ad hoc committee, the IRC.
So this is, I beg your pardon, so this is the recommendation coming from you, but not in the.
From the ad
ordinance.
hoc. I
Okay,
copied
from the ad
verbatim
hoc.
from the ad hoc committee. Also with regard to reasonable conditions for mooring. And there actually was very little with regard to any regulations. And in fact, by the definition, it's taken out of any STR regulations. And so there was, a local agent was defined but not required. Emergency contact information was not required. Fireworks were not prohibited like they are for short-term rentals.
But fireworks are prohibited in our
boats.
community.
Yeah,
So
you can't shoot
that's
fireworks
covered.
from boats.
State law.
Except for certain days, certain holidays, then
Not
they're
from a
allowed.
vessel, not from a vessel.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you can't
And-
have a grill on a boat. I mean, you can't have an inflammatory device on a vessel. I mean, it's full of gas or diesel.
I'm just, we have people visiting, and I am just trying to include aspects. And the visitor's guide may be well and good for a land-based short-term rental, but would be deficient for being on water. I think that you would need a slightly different one for the visitor's guide for water-based floating homes.
So it's clear that you have a lot of concerns about the ordinance as presented. What changes would you like to see made? And is there consensus among this group that you all would like us to make those changes that Mary would like to see? I mean, that's where we're at, is we appreciate the input, we appreciate the comments being submitted, but, you know, at the end of the day, we need a majority vote to
Right.
move forward with some of this.
So I'm kind of in the same camp as Jeff here. I'm okay the way it is. I see a lot of the additions that were recommended by the ad hoc committee as things that I would think would be difficult to enforce, and I'm okay that they are not included in this draft.
I'm comfortable with the way it is.
As Griffin said, we'll revisit it. We can revisit it in 2 months, but we will revisit it every year if we need to make adjustments.
I would just say, in regards to I don't have the term in front of me, but the good neighbor guide or whatever that last thing was, it does seem like there could be some good information that goes in regarding being on the water. That seems like an easy thing to tweak for this particular instance if people were in support of that. And I do appreciate what Mary's trying to do is cover a lot of our bases. I talked to Kate earlier about a couple of my concerns, and her response was similar to what George said, I think, that a lot of these things can't necessarily be enforced, or the things that we came up as part of the ad hoc committee, like when you translate them into our specific situation, it just doesn't work exactly how we wanted it to when we were building this. So I understand the concerns, but I think where we are now is a pretty good starting point.
I agree with Wendy. Are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we do not change the floating homes zoning or code of ordinance from what it is currently in the present form, and send that for the March 18th public hearing.
Second.
Any more discussion?
I did, and Mr. Husley brought up not having a local agent to contact, but we always will have those marina owners and marina managers we can contact if something, some animal house party's going on, it's one of these houseboats. We might not have the owner of that houseboat, but we can get to the marina.
I believe that would be correct, and I know
And I
part of
guess
how
I'm
we,
asking.
part of how we wrote into this as well, is that similarly to in the short-term rental ordinance, how the renters or the property owner can be responsible for a violation. This was written where the marina operator, owner, and the owner or the renter, kind of all these different parties can be responsible. If that's going to help us if we get to the point
Hopefully
of enforcement.
they'll police themselves then. Yeah.
On page 111, toward the top, part of the statement, if this is going to be used, if this floating home is going to be used for short-term rental, you need the name, address, and telephone number of the local agent for the floating home.
Oh, there we go. Okay, excellent.
Okay,
I would just add that so is the motion not incorporating Wendy's recommendation for additional criteria for water?
That, to me, is something that does not need to be in an ordinance. The good neighbor's guide can be changed anytime. It
Well-
doesn't need to be in an ordinance.
Well, it actually is referencing the Good Neighbors Guide under the land-based short-term rental. It has a specific reference to the guide.
Right, and if whoever puts together that good neighbor visitor guide wants to add something specifically for floating homes, that can be done, but it doesn't need to be in an ordinance, in my opinion.
it can be edited every year.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Arnold,
Yes.
Hasley,
No.
Onuki,
Yes.
Reeser,
Yes.
Sleeper,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Next, the city council. Thank you, Griffin. The city council will be asked to receive an update from Police Chief Natalie Thompson.
Thank you. Just wanted to give an update on golf carts. That is quickly coming upon us. Registration stickers and packets will be available from the police department on March 15th. The season was expanded last year through an amendment that was passed by City Council. The new season runs from March 15th through November 15th. In addition, this amendment also prohibits the use of golf carts to tow trailers, passenger carts, or other items. Golf carts do require a vehicle inspection by an officer. This inspection will correspond with a previous amendment that requires specific safety equipment. Any golf cart not meeting the requirements will not be registered for use in the city. Any golf cart that was registered last year in accordance with the safety requirements does not need a new registration. We don't charge any fee for the registrations or the inspections. Individuals in need of a golf cart inspection may do so at the police department 24/7, or someone can call Van Buren County Dispatch to request an officer to conduct the inspection at a specific location. So if you can't drive or tow your golf cart to the department, an officer can come to your residence or your business to do that inspection. As a reminder, as with all municipal city hall civil infraction tickets, any citation issued for a golf cart violation is paid at City Hall, not the court or at the police department. I believe Sergeant Hathaway actually created these, but we do have stickers that we put on the citation that have the City Hall address and phone number, and I believe we now have electronic. Yes, so we do, we have electronic or e-tickets, and I believe this year, we can actually do golf cart tickets on those, so they're not handwritten, they're a lot easier to see, and I think that'll alleviate some of the confusion on where people go to pay those, so, we're working on doing a better job with, letting people know where they go to pay those. Any individual who does want to contest a golf cart ticket, may receive a request form from City Hall. That form is filled out, and we turn that over to the 7th District Court West, and then a hearing is scheduled for that. As a reminder also, golf carts are never allowed to be legally operated in South Haven Township. And again, if anyone observes a violation, please call dispatch. If you as you heard Tim McGee say, if you do want contact from an officer, make sure you let dispatch know that. It is always helpful to provide a description if it's available, or the golf cart registration number. And we did a few years ago make those stickers and the numbers a little bit bigger to maybe help aid identifying a violator. So, like I said, that's coming up in a couple weeks. January calls for service, I have, those are an attachment attached in your packet, and those are directly from Van Buren County. So those are for the month of January. That includes our calls in the city and the township, and then the overall total for our police department. And I also included the ordinance for golf carts in your packet, as well as that amendment that was passed last year that expanded the season, and then the prohibition of the use of trailers, carts, or towing other items. And lastly, July 3rd, event planning has started. I've only had one meeting to go over the traffic control plans. At the sergeant's meeting today, we discussed just the roster, extra manpower, security staff, and whatnot. So we're going to be really ramping up our planning for that. So anyone have any questions?
Just thank you for you and your staff.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, public comment. Citizens of the audience will be heard on items not on the agenda, and you have 5 minutes. If there are no comments, we'll move on. City manager's comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. I just wanted to say, one, thank you for everyone's patience and attendance here today. For the pre-information meeting, if you will, pre-priority information meeting, that session was recorded, so if anyone would like to kind of go back and watch it again, it will be on the city's website. I wanted to thank Kim Wise and the staff for their assistance with the job fair that was held 2/24. We had around 45 attendees, and almost all of our positions have been filled. We're still going to be looking for those beach enforcement attendants. That is going to be one of our harder ones to fill, but I think they really fill in a critical niche for our summer seasonal help. As the chief did mention, overnight parking ends. I'm sorry, but she talked about golf carts starting, but that kind of coincides with the overnight parking restrictions ending. So that's kind of a pivotal date for us, is 3/15. It'll also be the time that we're going to start doing that transition from the off-season into the summer season. So that means us taking down the St. Joe or the Coast Guard Hills sledding, which not too much sledding going on this year. Also, just getting things prepared up for the season. So we have some things that are kind of shut down with maybe some walkways and or sidewalks and things like that. I'm thinking of like the Eagle Street stairs, getting those things kind of transitioned to be opened. You're going to see a lot of staff coming on to get things transitioned out. The ice rink was closed. Well, we were hoping for today to be the closure date, but because of some of the weather we had, it's been closed. And we're going to see the staff start to take that down over time. Just a few other updates. You may have noticed that we had 2 press releases that went out today. One about the Van Buren Street temporary closure. That'll be happening tomorrow. So the 400 block of Van Buren will be closed to through traffic as a new house is being brought in. So that closure should be ended tomorrow by 4 p.m. Additionally, for some of our folks, our Ward 3 folks on the north side, there will be a temporary bridge closure tomorrow. So the eastbound lane of Dykeman will be closed at least until I think 3 o'clock while we have some HVAC repaired at the bridge tender's house. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson's comments. We'll start with you, George.
I just want to mention I got stopped by the bridge today, so it's like a sure sign that spring is coming, so looking forward to it. That's it.
Thank you. Joe.
No comments.
Mary.
Sure. Just for everyone's benefit, recodification, there's a workshop on Thursday for Planning Commission to discuss policy at the Planning Commission level with regard to height, lot coverage, minimum green space requirements, planned unit development, short-term rental parking, and use variances. Also, at the regular meeting will be discussion of the master plan. And I just have a few comments, questions for Kate. I was just wondering, when might the STR workshop get scheduled? And when would we expect a beach safety program update? And when might Mr. Kilpatrick be issuing his information from our housing meeting last week?
Let me think about these. The update to the beach safety plan, we actually have some signs we're gonna be bringing back here to city council on the 3/18, just to update some of the things that you had mentioned, that need to be kind of clarified. So we're looking at an update around that time. Mr. Kilpatrick, we were hoping that we would get his update by the end of last week, but we did not receive that, so we will be touching base with him this week to see when that would occur. And I'm sorry, what was the third item?
STR workshops.
Yes, we have been asking Bloom Sluggett to be kind of leading that charge with us, kind of getting that all in one-stop shop. So we're going to be looking to see what their availability is and kind of getting some feedback from council.
Okay, and I know Ryan Servadius had emailed the city council about ideas, and it would be nice to look into reducing hookup fees and things like that. And I don't know, would that come under the remit of the Public Works, or how that might happen?
I believe hookup fees may be, I'll have to check and see if they're set by city or if they're set by Shawsa, because if it's an authority issue, then that's a little bit outside of the city council's hands. But I can look into that.
And then also the ready-to-serve fee. I know that people get frustrated that the monthly fee when they're not even there is significant.
Yeah, I hear that. I also know that something's gonna go up. If the ready-to-serve fee isn't there, then how much you're using goes up. 'Cause
Correct,
there's
and those who are very conscientious and don't use as much, it may be beneficial for them, especially for an aging
Yep.
community.
And that's a very good point. There's also people who use it and who have to live here year-round, that's gonna be a hit that they're gonna take. So it's a balancing act to see how you'd like to do that, but I'm not sure if that's within the council's purview or if that's a Shawsa item as well.
Wendy?
I just wanted to thank everyone for their comments today and everyone who came to the presentation portion earlier, and that's it.
No comment.
Mary, I just want to say thank you again for all the work that you put in to tonight's presentation. We appreciate that. And I just want to ask to make sure that Councilmember Hosley's memo is added to the website so people can view it, since
Which memo?
the one that she submitted on houseboats and floating homes.
Would you like us just to add it into the packet?
Sure, that'd be
Okay.
great. Thank you. And thank you to our clerk, Megan Kiker, and the election workers for a well-run primary election. We appreciate you, so thank you. And were you stuck somewhere because of the tornado?
Yes, so I got to spend about an hour in the basement of the county courthouse with my fellow clerks, so it was a great bonding experience for all of us after a long day. But just small little brag, I was told I got a gold star because all my stuff was perfect, so it was kind of like a nice little cherry on top of a long day, so.
Great,
It was all
great.
good.
They have huge respect for you at the county, I'm telling you. And please take time to see the children's art exhibit at the Center for the Arts. It's amazing, and you will be blown away by the talent. And finally, happy birthday to Kelly Dissett, our planning administrator, and Griffin Graham, who's also celebrating tonight, our great assistant city manager. So happy birthday to both of you, and we appreciate all your work. And that's all.
Great.
If there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.